Where?
Comments, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. Yeah. Thank you, thank you.
Hey.
Okay. You got better. I just got this little name.
Thank you.
I think they gave me a different iPad. This one's different.
This is just a clean copy of the draft copy that's. in the
Well,
file.
I don't know. I have my
In
notes
the
in
packet, it's exactly the same.
I got one right here.
Yep.
And when I opened up this morning
Right.
to see what the
Pass that out.
update, and it, I lost everything on the. I didn't know either.
But I want to look at, we don't have enough on the committee. I want to combine with the law.
Uh-oh. Oh, yeah, I mean, there's so
All
much
right.
stuff
Can
on
I
here.
just read it, but we need to just really look at the whole thing and
Yes, sir.
see how many we want on the committee.
Yes, sir.
That's what we might recommendation.
They can do that. And it's- That's what she said. I hope so. That's right. You never know whether it'll come up again.
This was started here where they can get out there now and just use it. Under yes. I like it when it's cool.
Yes, sir. I mean, I don't mind. You did it right on stage.
I get that fire going and get up like this, and I go inside.
Yeah.
He said his arrangements every 5 days. I didn't check that. I don't want that again. They're great.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Aye.
Yeah, me too. Yep. Yeah. Hey, I'm saving money, saving money already.
I'm working on it.
Okay, I guess it's about that time.
Mandy, are you recording?
About ready. Okay, I'd like to call the December 7th, 2020 council meeting for the city of Lake City to order. If everyone would stand for the pledge of allegiance and remain standing for the invocation.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings you bestow upon our community. We ask for you to give us guidance in what we do this evening that's pleasing in your eyes and for the betterment of our community. We ask for you to help us get past this pandemic and move forward and get our country back where it needs to be in the world. Look after our citizens, our first responders, our troops. In your name we pray. Amen. Ms. Knight, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sampson,
Here.
Mr. Green,
Here.
Mr. Hill,
Here.
Mr. Jefferson,
Here.
Mayor Witt,
Here.
Mr. Coverline,
Here.
Mr. Helfenberger,
Here.
Chief Gilmore.
Okay, we have no proclamations or minutes. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Motion is second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is presentations. We have Ms. Brooke Fry from the Columbia Health Advocate.
Hi, good evening. Is it best to leave my mask on to speak? Okay, just so you'll hear me a little bit better. Thank you. So good evening. Thank you for allowing me to come. My name is Brooke Fry, and I'm with the Tobacco Free Partnership of Columbia County. I gave you all a folder ahead of time, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But the Tobacco Free Partnership, I'll tell you a little bit about it. We're dedicated to promoting a tobacco-free norms and reducing youth access to the tobacco products. Reducing youth access to tobacco products is an important goal, and I thank you for allowing me here to come this evening to educate you about tobacco retail license and what a tobacco retail license can do to benefit our community. No matter where you are, there's tobacco retailers everywhere. Just actually within the city limits, there's 35. And 14 of those are actually within 1,000 feet of a school. So that's pretty close. Actually, I'm doing tobacco retail assessments right now and just went to one that's within, 500 feet of a school, so that's access of an elementary school. And also, while retailers must abide by state regulations because they are regulated, the regulations are sometimes minimal and not heavily enforced. So this lack of enforcement is concerning for many reasons. Most significantly, the ability for minors to purchase addictive tobacco products. I wanted to briefly discuss with you about the Florida Senate Bill 810. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with it. It was recently vetoed by Governor DeSantis. This bill, if passed, would have aligned the state law with the federal law, which raises the actual age to purchase tobacco to 21. So I'm not sure if you all are aware, but the federal age for to sell tobacco is 21, but that is not a state regulation. So we would like to, move forward, to help that become a state regulation or within a city ordinance. It would have also classified vaping products and e-liquids as tobacco products, which they are as addictive because they do have nicotine in them. It would have banned the sale of any flavored tobaccos that were banned by the FDA and require freestanding vape retailers to obtain a retail license, which is not required as of now. The vetoing of this bill means that there are no local enforcement capabilities for age compliance for the federal age change. And the city and Lake City has to rely on federal enforcement, which might not happen quite as often. It also means that the vape nicotine only retailers are not subject to age compliance enforcements by the state, and they're not mandated to hold an ABT license like traditional tobacco retailers. According to the most recent Florida Youth Tobacco Survey, which we were able to actually get data from Columbia County before the pandemic hit this year, so we were able to get that data, 26.6% of youth aged 11 to 17 in Columbia County currently use tobacco products. Now that includes e-cigarettes, cigars, smokeless, all of those, which is a pretty high amount. And I have a son in high school, so I know how often they are subjected to those products. So to protect youth and improve public health, local governments are turning to tobacco retail license to directly control the sale of tobacco products in their community. So to talk about the packet, I gave you each a packet that has an overview of what tobacco retail licensing is specifically, and what it is and how it can curb the significant increase in youth e-cigarette use. You'll also find an infographic detailing how tobacco retail license can help your community and why it's important. And also what's really important is there's a sample of a City of Vero Beach ordinance that was passed, I think about 6 months ago, to raise the age in the City of Vero Beach to 21 with local enforcement. So within their city limits, the tobacco is 21 to purchase. And they also do have local law enforcement that does enforce that. And then there's also information about the Public Health Law Center that kind of talks about what an ordinance looks like and how you can go about getting that. There's also evidence that a local tobacco retail license is a great way to reduce tobacco use and is an effective way to reduce density, type, and location of retailers. This helps reduce disparities on how tobacco products are marketed and sold because they are highly marketed, whether you realize it or not. We already know the long-term health effects of tobacco smoke. We've known for a long time. And lung cancer, heart disease, COPD, just to name a few. And out of the entire state, surprisingly, Columbia County is 61 out of 67 in health outcomes. So we're pretty low in our health outcomes. and number 50 out of 67 in health factors, which includes smoking and other life-threatening diseases related to the health outcomes. Our ranking further highlights the need to reduce youth access to these addictive products to protect them from the long-term health consequences, because we really don't know the long-term health effects of e-cigarettes. I mean, we are seeing things happening now like the EBOLI, the e-cigarette lung disease that, they have been hospitalized. There have been youth that have lost a lung. There have been injuries that we're seeing right now. So we don't know the long-term effects, but we have seen some pretty effective, pretty bad problems early on. So before I finish my presentation, I'd like to educate you on some of the additional benefits of a local, that local communities have seen with having a retail license. As I mentioned before, it can reduce the density and the number of retailers because it's associated with high rates of youth and adult tobacco use, because if they're on every corner, you have access. And actually within the whole county, there's 113 retailers, which is a pretty high amount for our county. It can also restrict businesses near schools or parks. So it can limit new retailers opening close to parks or close to schools, so that can limit the access to youth. And it can reduce sales to youth. A recent study found that young people who live in communities with a tobacco retail license that covers the cost of compliance checks are 33% less likely to use cigarettes and 26% less likely to start using e-cigarettes. A TRL can also maintain a list of tobacco and e-cigarette retailers and fund compliance monitoring programs. So it would enable the governing body to maintain a comprehensive list of businesses that sell tobacco, and which would include a yearly fee to help generate revenue for those compliance checks. So that's all. I appreciate you guys allowing me to speak with you. If you have any questions, you're welcome to look through the packet. My information is in there if you have any other questions. Or if you
Have any questions? We do appreciate y'all coming and doing the presentation, and
Thank
we
you.
certainly will look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have State of the Utilities Update, PowerPoint presentation, Assistant City Manager Daniel Sweat and Executive Director of Utilities Paul Dial.
I think before we get started, I'd like to introduce you, in case everybody doesn't know some of the players here. Gentleman right here, this is Mike Osborne. He is our Director of Water. The gentleman behind him is Steve Brown, Director of Natural Gas. To your left over here, this is Cody Friedman. He is Director of Wastewater. And directly behind, on the last row, is Jason Dumas. He is the Director, or the GIS SCADA manager. Right? All right, this is Paul Dahl, Executive Director of Utilities. I'd like to walk you through this presentation. If you can hold off to the end before your questions, that would be wonderful. But if you really feel passionate about asking something, please let me know. All right. Understanding the existing infrastructure and customer base. The number of customers using city supplied water is 8,912. The number of customers using city supplied gas is currently 2,109. And those using city sewage is 5,891. All right. Now, currently the city supplies water, wastewater, and gas services to between 7,300 to 8,500 customers in the Lake City and Columbia County. And the number varies dependent upon the billing cycle. This was sent to me about 2 weeks ago. So the number inside the city limits taking gas, and something you have to understand here, the gas rate is the same inside and outside the city limits. So you'll notice that it's 2,319, which is the exact number. We don't have a way at this time without going through individually and looking at each and every person, their address, to see if they're inside or outside for gas. But for water, since there is a difference in the rate, there are 5,356 people inside the city limits using water. There are 5,221 for sewage. Now the number outside the city limits is as follows: water, 3,566, and sewage 670. We can also break this down by residential and by commercial customers. The number of residential customers for gas is about 1,924, water is 7,538, and sewage is 4,804, with only 395 of our residential, commercial customers using gas, 1,374 using water, and about 1,087 using wastewater. This is from it's out there right now. It's at the Price Creek plant and was taken from the waterworks back in 1934. Now, currently, the city water system is supplied solely from Price Creek Water Treatment Facility. Now, the city of Lake City assumed responsibility for water distribution in 1846. Water was temporarily supplied from the Lake City Waterworks plant, when you just saw the sign for in 1935, with the Putnam Street plant coming online in 1947. There are approximately 278.9 miles of mapped water piping in this system. Currently, the year running daily average is about 3,347,342 gallons. You'll notice here, though, only 75% of all the water lines in the city system have been mapped and verified in GIS. Currently, the Water Department, Distribution and Collections and GIS Group are working to pull this information into GIS. There's a picture of the Price Creek Water Treatment Plant. Now, the Price Creek Water Treatment Plant came into operation back in 2007. Currently, the plant is operating at about 80% of its water use permit, which regulates the plant to about 4,1,906 gallons, million gallons per day on average. Its average operation is about 3.347 million gallons per day. And it's permitted by Florida DEP to actually produce 9 million gallons a day. And if we were permitted and we were able to, through expansion, we could actually produce 18 million gallons per day. Wastewater. Now, we took responsibility for wastewater at the city of Lake City in 1928 at the Margaret Road Water Treatment Facility. There are 44.83 miles of sanitary sewage, forced main piping, and 57.8 miles of gravity sewage mapped in the wastewater system at this time. Currently, the city system is operating using the St. Margaret Street and the Kicklighter facilities for waste treatment and the spray fields and wetlands for wastewater reintroduction into the aquifer. Currently, there are 66 lift stations within the city, with 2 more projected for the I-75-47 interchange. This is the big one here. Currently, only 50% of all sewage lines in the city of Lake City have been mapped and verified in GIS. Once again, our wastewater group, along with the NC, Distribution and Collections and GIS, are working to take and pull this information into GIS. This is the Kicklighter wastewater treatment facility. I apologize for not putting it as water. It should say wastewater treatment facility. This slide is just a brief overview over the years until we came into about 2007. You'll notice there what had been done out there at St. Margaret Street. Up until Kicklighter coming online, this was the only water treatment facility in the city of Lake City. You can see there's been a number of things and projected. I think in this year, between this year and next year, there's an outage plan at St. Margaret's, and they're going to upgrade the aeration system. 6 mechanical aerators have been in operation since 1970. Upgrade clarifier 3 to match the other 2 clarifiers for more consistent operation. Upgrade headwork, screening, and grit removal. Replacement of effluent pumps, and replace various implant piping and valves. Now, the St. Margaret Street average daily annual average daily flow is about 1.75 million gallons per day, therefore leaving about 1.25 million gallons per day of available capacity. Kicklighter is about 0.43 million gallons per day, leaving about 2.57 million gallons per day available. Now, effluent disposal sites at the
the wetlands in the spray field is about 2.31 million gallons per day. That only leaves us about 0.69 million gallons per day of available capacity. I'm going to ask Paul to step up here. I want him to discuss public access reuse, also known as reclamation water.
Our PAR system is not being in use right now. It was basically designed on a 24-hour operation. And basically what you can see for this, we can't hold the chlorine residuals based on an 8-hour shift. So what we have done, I have put in for a grant last year, well, the first part of this year, for $1 million to do what the engineers have told us we need to do, which is move the chlorine contact chamber, move it back over across the road to the disc filter so we can get quicker chlorination on it. We originally, 2 years ago, I think it was, Cody, where we actually budgeted to try to fix the PAR system. I think it was around $800-some thousand at that time. All the bids come in way too high, so we weren't able to get it done then. This project is already permitted, it's already been designed, so it's ready to go once we get the grant. The only obstacle that we face with running the PAR system is the wetland system. Most all of our effluent right now goes to the wetland system. We already have one customer that's hooked up to the PAR system, well, to our irrigation as far as PAR system for our effluent. That's Mr. Tice. He actually has a 10-year contract with the city to receive the effluent or the PAR once we get the system up and running to where it holds the residual to be able to send to him. So at this time, like I said, we have the grant out to get it fixed, to get it operational. But even once it becomes operational, we already have a customer online. He's fully piped. Everything's there from day one. We can turn the water on once he needs to use it. The problem comes in, we don't have enough water to send down the PAR system and to keep the effluent going into the wetlands. Both of these projects were funded by Suwannee River Water Management. Suwannee River Water Management knows about that. So once we do get the PAR running, we're gonna have to have serious conversations with Suwannee River. Are we gonna do reuse or are we gonna keep the wetlands? It's gonna be one or the other. Until we can get our flows up, either through new development, whatever we have to do to increase our effluent or our reuse so we can have it to disposal. But right now, even once we get the PAR system up and running, we'll have a minimum amount that we'll be able to send to Tice or to anyone else when we get a future grant or whatever to expand the reuse system.
All right, natural gas. Currently, the city system is supplied by the Florida Gas Transmission with a backfeed from People's Gas, and this should the need arise or only in emergency. You know, a lot of people, tell me if I'm wrong here, Steve, a lot of people have made the comment People's Gas is there. But we have a very limited contract with them, am I correct? And it's only in an emergency that needs to be stressed, or if the need should arise, and we have to identify that need. Now, the city of Lake City assumes responsibility for this gas distribution in 1958. There are about 350 miles of gas piping in the natural gas system, with about 228 miles as main supply. It must be understood, though, that these numbers are fluid due to the fact that laterals are not included as part of the annual report and due to addition and retirement of lines. In October 2020, the gas department reported usage was 39,495 million cubic feet. Currently, the gas, because it comes under such stringent regulation, is at about 95% inside our GIS system. GIS, natural gas, and distribution collections are all working together to try to get that last 5% put into the system. All right, how did we get in this position? And when I say how did we get in this position, how did we get to the point where we're having this discussion today, and why are we talking about a master plan? There's a number of reasons. One of them is antiquated methods of information gathering and documentation in the past, lack of foresight into preventive maintenance and permanent repairs in the past, poor engineering in the past. Surveyors, providers are backed up about 6 to 8 weeks. Some of it's due to COVID, and some of it's just due to the fact that there's so much growth in the area. Lack of resources to conduct comprehensive piping surveys. For example, staffing. So antiquated methods of information gathering. Before the advent of widespread spread computer use, information gathered on the city's piping system was handwritten, word of mouth, or stored in the head of an operator or an engineer. I mean, that's what it came down to. Drawings we have found are incorrect and have not been verified or validated. In some instances, locations were not given by GPS position, but by local landmarks. For example, all right, on the drawing, it may say go 15 yards past or 20 yards past the old oak tree. Well, the old oak tree's been gone for 20 years. There's nothing we can do. You know, we've got to go back out there. You have to put boots on the ground and you have to go with it. You know, someone has got to go find that thing. So prior to 2007, GIS was not used for information gathering. And even after the implementation, it wasn't until 2012 that the information being put into the system was being verified for accuracy. And then we began to complete. So you can see for the past 8 years, gentlemen like Mr. Dumas back there, Mr. Dial here have worked trying to bring the correct information into the system, but it's a painstaking process. All right. So currently, let's talk about maintenance. Currently, the piping arrangement in the city of Lake City consists of piping varying construction. Some of the pipes are over 50 and some are over 100 years old. Terracotta being some of the oldest, plastic, PVC, cast iron, HDPE, steel and polyurethane. As someone pointed out, that's no different than any other place in America, older city in America. Currently, we do not have a computerized maintenance management system, which is used to track corrective, preventive, and to do predictive maintenance. Majority of work prior has been corrective or reactive in nature based on budget constraints. Now, I do want to state that some of the newer plants, we are up to date on our preventive maintenance. A newer plant, you don't have to take and do as much corrective PM. But when you get outside, you get out there in some of these older neighborhoods, we are constantly putting out fires. Now, engineering in the past was done with an emphasis on budget and not good engineering principles. Installing undersized piping at road crossings and along forest mains have caused bottlenecks requiring repairs and or replacement. During project design in the past, little thought was given to the growth of Lake City. In Columbia County, stub outs or what they call JICs, just in case, were not installed for additional lines to be added. Surveys. Currently, like I said earlier, we're about 6 to 8 weeks behind on those, and growth in the area has inundated surveyors, causing these delays. All right, staffing. I know this is a little small, but this is basically our water department. We're showing here that we are down 1 employee in this department. All right. You look at distribution and collections. This is one of the key elements in gathering information for GIS. We're actually down 5 positions here. 4 of them in collections, 1 of them in distribution. You go over to natural gas. They're down 1 employee. It's possible, you know, but not unsafe. They could be down 2. Go over to GIS. They're down 1 of their GIS analysts, and their SCADA analyst won't be with them until January the 4th. Wastewater is the only area where we're currently fully staffed, but it should be noted here that if there is an addition of another water treatment plant in the future, you know, as they're talking about out there at the North Florida Mega Park, that's going to require staffing. It's on the other side of town. The closest, you know, you're talking St. Margaret Street is the closest sewage plant or water treatment plant to that area. So issues surrounding trying to hire new staffing, lack of qualified candidates. The number of candidates, and I believe I can say this, is we have a difficulty in finding people that meet the minimum qualifications. They don't have a GED, they don't have a high school diploma, or they don't have a Florida driver's license. Lack of skill sets to perform the work, specifically in like areas like GIS. We put this out there, we might not have anybody apply, or if the people do apply, they're underqualified. Pay. Applicants are offered more in surrounding areas and not versed in the benefit package available from the city of Lake City. They take jobs elsewhere, or in a worst case situation, they come to work for us, they learn a skill set, and then they leave us and go someplace else. Job duties, and specifically this is in the area of collections. Many applicants are confused by the job title and don't wish to go forward in the process. If they think that when they hear collections, they think they're gonna be sitting behind a desk collecting payments, and then they find out they have to work out there on sewage lines, it changes the people that are applying. So I should say this, in a lot of the aforementioned obstacles, we're still able to move forward. GIS is working with distribution and collections, natural gas to identify piping, fire hydrants, manhole locations as they're in the field. What we are recommending though is in the future, we come up with a management of change process. Basically what we're saying there is in the future, no one will make changes without being signed off, understanding what that change is, agreeing to it engineering wise, and then making sure a gentleman like Mr. Jason Dumas back there is able to receive the information so that drawings are updated and the right revision is in our folder. Maintenance, utility personnel in the past few years have begun the process to become more proactive. A CMMS will be required to begin tracking and scheduling predictive and preventive maintenance, and they have begun to identify stuff in the field. They've also begun, since the past 2 years, I think they've taken over the fire hydrants this year to repair or replace fire hydrants and manholes as part of a corrective and preventive maintenance program. I think they said out of the 17 that they had at the beginning, they're down to 2? And there's been a lot less complaints. Currently, right now, the city of Lake City has contracted a number of outside engineering firms to ensure projects are not only correct, but meet the needs of expansion and growth. It's highly recommended that we identify a utility or a civil engineer to assist with a number of engineering projects the city is doing or planning on performing in the future. This will add a level of oversight for contracted engineering work, lessen the need for contract engineering, thereby lowering costs, and will allow for utility personnel assistance sooner. Surveys. I said GIS is working with a number of survey companies to expedite the process, but we need better planning between the city and the county personnel to facilitate plan for survey work that is essential to improve this function. Staffing. Ensure applicants understand the minimum requirements. Cast a wider net to draw more qualified and diverse applicant pool. Change the way we post for clarity. Work with local high schools, colleges, churches, and youth groups to find qualified applicants. Ensure that the city of Lake City uses every opportunity with potential applicants to help them understand that although the pay may not be as competitive with other industries in the area, the benefit package and retirement packages more than make up for these shortcomings. So although we identified all this, it does mean we can't look at some of these as an opportunity. Staffing has been identified along with utilities, making an effort to educate applicants and cast that wider net. Engineering deficiency has led senior management to understand the importance of an in-house engineer. Maintenance issues are being identified and repairs are in whole, and we're not piecemealing it anymore. And failure to record information in the past has signaled utility personnel to understand the importance of gathering correct information and ensuring it's recorded correctly. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I have some questions.
Yes.
First and foremost, I want to thank the employees. I think they do a good job for the most part that I've seen in the utility department, but I have a lot of questions about this presentation. One, the mapping percentage and why it's so low. In 2015, the city spent $200,000 with Jones Edmonds on a mapping program. Did that not get us help there?
Councilman, I came into utilities at the end of 2015 and November of 2015. When I came into utilities, this contract had already been awarded or task order to Jones Edmonds at the time. None of the Jones Edmonds people here now, Jamie and all them, were not included in this. This was strictly through their GIS department. The original contract, when I came in and seen it, most of the $200,000 was for in-office work. I worked with Mr. Roberts, who was over the utility department at that time, to get more of that money put towards location in the field. This is a sore subject for me, and Jones Edmonds knows it as well. We went through this several times. The information was not gathered correctly to begin with. The database that we sent them, a lot of the time it was overlaid and they were just shooting the same points that we had already sent them. When they did get some boots on the ground, it was one guy with a backpack that was going around and just taking shots on whatever he could see, not pulling the whole thing. In the end, they got a few more people on it, but by this time, we'd already burned up most of the money that was allocated for this utility location. A lot of the information that was gathered was still incorrect based on what they were using, the old data that we had, that we sent them, which was not gathered correctly in the first place. When I came to the city in 2012 in GIS, they'd already had an individual in the GIS department for 5 years. The reason the gas department is better well mapped than any of the others, basically because of Mr. Steve Brown and his diligence in the gas. The other is like Mr. Sweat said, because it's mandated by the state. They were taking care of locating their own utilities, the gas department. The water and sewer was being located by the individual that was in the GIS department at that time. Now, I'm not gonna go back and say what or how we did for 5 years, but when I got here in 2012, a lot of the stuff that was in the system, which can be attested, they might say it's on this side of the road, it's on this side of the road. They used a lot of correction factors in the GPS systems they used back then. We've been able to update those systems over the last few years till we have the most up-to-date RTK systems and everything else to locate it with a single point. We don't have to use correction factors and all that anymore. So that is one reason we've gotten to the point now where we, in the last couple of years or the last 5 years, the first 2 years I was in utilities, the first 2 years, year and a half to 2 years, was spent trying to correct a lot of the issues that were in the utility department. The last 3 years have been assembling what I would estimate one of the best utility teams that you'll find in the state. I will put any one of these individuals up against anybody in the state or anybody in the county or in the country for that matter, for their dedication and knowledge for what they do. That being said, as far as locating this stuff in the field, we spend most of our time fixing the old system that we have. But we're diligently been working for the last couple of years, especially since Jason come on last year, to get the system to where it needs to be. We're out there diligently GPSing everything that we can with the new systems that we have. We're actually verifying. And to Mr. Sweat's point, we have as-bills that say the water line's on this side of the road. It's a 12-inch. We have a break and we go out here to do maintenance on it and dig it up. It's on the other side of the road, and it's a 6-inch. That all falls back to the engineers and contractors in years past weren't held to the standard to make sure the stuff was ready. But it also falls back on the city. A lot of the inspectors and stuff they used in the past basically didn't care. They just go out there, they might have not even got out of their vehicle, or they might have not have had an inspector. And as most of you know, if you don't have watching a contractor, he's gonna throw whatever he wants in the ground, however he can get it in the ground. We no longer do that. We haven't done that for a long time. We have an inspector on every job the city does. But that is how we got to the point now where most of the system that we have, half of it's probably located. Like I said, on the figures we have, but we have a lot more out here that needs to be done. But on the $200,000 that was spent to Jones Edmonds, it's basically, we didn't really get a whole lot out of that information.
What do you estimate the time frame to complete that mapping with the new guy coming on with?
If we can get the new guy on and can dedicate him strictly to that, and plus we can pull some other people in, because like I said, our distribution, our gas, and all our employees now, when they go out, they're locating stuff for us now. Another thing that we implemented with a lot of help from Jason is we're trying to automate the way we do things in the field. Most all of them have iPads in the field now where they can automatically just go ahead and shoot the point and it's there. They can make edits in the field. If they find that the valve or the line's not where it's supposed to be, they can look at the map, they can make edits on the map and send it automatically back to Jason. So we've implemented a lot of technology to be able to where almost any employee can go out there and locate and get the system better and send it back and put it into the system. But as far as your question, I would hate to put a timeline on it. Off the top of my head, with the resources that we have now, you would probably be looking at anywhere from 3 to 5 years.
Okay, I have another question on 47. We've been hearing a lot about this project. Where are we in the process on the project, the time frame for completion, and can developers apply now for the service with an understanding of when it will be available? That's the first part. And the second part of that, I know we heard at the county meeting that they're going forward with the development out there. Can we do something to pre-purchase as the owner, the items that we need, the pipe, the pump, the specialized items, so that it would speed that process up so we can get it in the ground a lot quicker?
That is one of the things that me and Jamie have talked about in the past, to be able to, once we get to go ahead, we know exactly what it is we're doing. 90% plans, I think Jamie's promised me by the middle of January 4th. And once we get them and get those reviewed, we should have 100% plans by the end of January, is what I was told. And we put it out to bid. But once we get to that point, yes, there is things that we could go ahead and order ahead of time, because there's a several month lead on pumps and things like that. We need to go ahead and start trying to get in, especially on the lift station side and all of that.
The Bell Road corridor and providing utilities needed for those projects. I know I met with Jamie as well, and I had some questions for her. Where are we out there for future expansion and other items coming in?
Well, what we have looped out there now, that's why we wanted the 12-inch line looped out there. So that way we could basically be able to fill, unless we get some crazy, something comes out here, wants millions and millions of gallons, which I don't foresee that based on all the calculations where Jamie and them's talked with the county. I haven't been involved in those talks. Basically, the figures that they're giving me that we should be able to handle as far as the water side out there. Now, the sewer side, Jamie and them have done I guess we could call it a capacity study for Bell Road coming back to St. Margaret's to see where we need to shore up some of our lines, maybe add an additional lift station, pump some other stuff onto Sisters Welcome to get it out the kick ladder, to be able to handle that potential eventual flow that they're predicting in that whole area up there. One thing that we did also is we have an agreement with Florida Department of Transportation. When we made an agreement with them to take effluent from that Baker County rest area, which this council approved, it's about 50,000 gallons a day coming from the rest area. We were able to negotiate with them to put us a water, sewer, and gas line under I-10 to the north side of I-10. That gives us the ability to future expand there, maybe loop that back around from 441 to 41 and pick up all that property there on 441 north or 41 north there to be able to pick it in.
Okay, also, then going back to the, so that, and 47, I didn't clarify. So January 31st, when we'll be ready for bid, and so the completion of that project in the...
But put it out in bid, you got 36 to probably 90 days, so you're probably looking at, what we say, construction maybe around June, July to start construction on that. And that permit for DEP, or the grant permit, I put in last year, and that permit has been extended to July of 2022, so that gives us plenty of time to finish it before the grant has to go back and be remodified.
And once construction started, we can go ahead and start with the applications for other users.
This is the sticking point with this right here. And Jamie, this is the grant that the city has, the $2.67 million. It is strictly an environmental grant. That is something I have not been able to get across to the county, due respect to the county. This is an environmental grant. It was never intended in any way, shape, or form to have economic development tied to it. Now, DEP understands that once it's built, development's going to tie to it. So we have to be real careful how we word and put stuff out that, hey, we're doing this so this development can hook into it. I was told specifically from DEP that this is strictly an environmental grant. They can hook to it after it's built. So technically, it needs to be built in the ground and functioning before we try to put it out there to where we're hooking into the system.
All right. On the North Florida Intermodal Park, we hear a lot of talk about the raw water that the county wants to provide. And then, you know, with our capacities we have available, it ties back into how we lost the 1.6 million gallons. And I can't get an answer from Suwannee River Water Management of why we lost that 1.6 million gallons. One, where are we in the process to get that back? Have we reached out to them and said, hey, where's our 1.6 million gallons you took from us without telling us why?
Mike has been diligently working on that, but I'll let him speak to that. Me and Mike have been working on that for the last several years. Just like yourself, we have not been able to get one document specifically stating why they dropped the permit. They pinned it to it because of the water loss. But they have not sent us an official document saying that it was done, but I'll let Mike speak to that.
Before I get started, I'll go ahead and give you guys a copy of some things that I put together. This is the top sheet, and on down from that is actually our water use permit.
She's real important. Thank you, Mike.
You'll notice I highlighted the 4.109 million gallons. This permit was originally done back in 2003, and it's supposed to be a 20-year permit. When I started as director of the water treatment plant, the end of 2013, beginning of 2014, I contacted Swanee River. We've been in discussions because back then we were getting close to that 80% mark. And once you get to that 80% mark of your water use permit, you need to start negotiating with them about getting it raised. Well, I was given the old water use permit, and that's the one that I had. I was not given this. So in my discussions with Swanee River, they came to do an audit of my wetlands. They came out and did drilling in my wetlands and stuff, and that's when they gave me this, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not the one I got. We need to start discussing this. So I've been discussing this with the previous city manager, and now Mr. Heffenberger and Mr. Sweat's on board for many years. I've yet to been able to get any information from them on why they reduced it. They just told me it was reduced. So right now you're looking at a 4.109. Behind this permit, I added a piece of paper which I keep track of flows. If you'll notice, we're looking at, as of the end of last month, we're doing a 3.349 million gallons a day. That's the 80% mark, a little bit more. When this only leaves us a few 100,000 gallons to work with. Now, I heard you mention the 47 project. You do that development, you're going to need water for it too.
That's right.
You're going to probably need 2 times the water that you're going to need for the wastewater, because a lot of water gets thrown on the ground for irrigation. You got the Bell Road. You got the mega industrial park. Well, one thing that me and Mr. Dial have always looked at is we always looked at the citizens of Lake City. That's our job. Yes, I live in a county and I'd like to see a lot of growth in the county, but we are primary for the citizens of Lake City. That's our job. That's my job. That's his job. And that's what we look out for. So when you run into, we're at 80%, and we can't get any numbers from Swanee River, and we've been negotiating with them. I've tried everything I can come up with. We took over one of the county's plants they were having problems with, so we put piping in. We took over that neighborhood. I tried to get credit for those wells, but no avail. I can't up my permit, even though we shut their wells down. They're saying all we did was move the water from here to here. Well, we shut those wells down. They were active wells above and beyond what our capacity was. Why can't we get credit for it? Can't get any answers. Like I said, we've been actively working on this for years. We finally got Joe Nesman. They're doing a water assessment for us. The council had approved that. It's being paid half by us, half by Swanee River. I currently have a water audit tomorrow. Florida Rural Water Association is coming in to do a water audit for our 2019 water use. We put together a survey for Swanee River from 2018, which shows we are accounting for over 90% of our water. We have less than 10% unaccounted for water. When I first started here, some of the water was being accounted for with flushing. Anything that the water plant went out and flushed was being accounted for, but anything from distribution, auto flushers, fire stations, forestry, anybody who uses water off our system was lagged and not being accounted for. Since then, every month I get an update, even from the gas department gives me an update. When they use their drilling machine and they use 300 gallons to drill a hole, they let me know. So we can keep account for this water, so when we go to Swanee River, we have a better chance of getting this thing raised up. But like I said, we're doing everything we can for the citizens of Lake City first. And the county's put a lot of pressure on us for that mega industrial park and raw water and this, that, and the other. But I think our priorities are for the citizens before they are for the county.
Asking about that, so if we need to double it, so if we already applied for, in addition to trying to get that 1.6 million back, have we applied for another permit?
That's why we're doing the water assessment, so that we have the information to apply. This permit don't run out until 2023. And honestly, I don't see Swanee River Water Management District doing anything to abate that as far as a new one until 2023. Our best chance right now is to get the water that was taken away put back in there for the next couple of years.
With that being the case, could we also raise the amount available through reclaimed water? Is there ways, I know we mentioned how, we're not there on the kick ladder plant, but there's other ways to do that.
Well, the only way the reuse is going to get more is if we get new development, we put new users on to increase the flows. Because right now, like I said, our availability of the reuse we have right now is pretty much all strictly going to the wetland to support it. And that's the function that Swanee River give us a grant for, 2013 or 14 to construct it. So they took away one part of our spray field to be able to build that. And the only way we're going to be able to get any more credits for that, we've tried to get credits through the wetland. We tried to get credits for taking it from the spray field. We tried to do everything. We've come up with every possible scenario for them to come. They always come up with a reason not to be able to do it. But the only way we can get more credits using reuse is we're able to pipe it to other individuals. Say, like, if we give it to Tice, that will help us some, but based on the wells that he already has, he's not gonna take his wells offline. He's already said that. Because why would a farmer do that? Because then if something happens to us and he can't get the water from us, he still has to have the well. Our only other option would be, say, like the new wastewater treatment plant they're planning on building at the east side out here. If you could get that whole development into reuse and use all the water that came out of there, all the heat wanting to come out of there and use it as reuse, yes, that would help, the capacity to be able to do it. But here in Lake City, based on unless we can pick our flows up, plus we'll have to invest $1 million in piping to get it to like a Quail Heights or somewhere like that to use on their golf courses. But there again, you run into the same thing that you run. How much credit are they going to give us back? Because they're on private wells as well. And like Mike said, we've always had an issue trying to get credits when we take a private well or something like that, or even a well from the county offline.
We have an inventory of those wells we pulled offline, and what's the possibility of reactivating those wells and putting it back in? Because under 400,000 gallons, we can activate a well just about anywhere. Isn't that correct?
The location of the wells, it would cost more to run piping to the water plant than the wells were produced. And the reason they were taken offline is because they kept filling their back teats and were having to be basically chlorinated every month. So those wells are garbage wells that we had the county take offline.
But no credit. We didn't get any credit from the Swanee River. So it seems
Now,
like
when 47 goes online, like Paul said, and you pick up that stuff, you're going to get more heading to the wastewater plant, which will give us a little bit more capacity there. But also, one of the things Jamie's looking into too is the water that actually goes into the septic tanks. Like myself, I live in the county, I get city water, have a septic tank. We don't get credit for that water going back into the ground on these septic tanks, and they're looking into that credit for us.
and then would we need to be taking the septic tank waste in at the wastewater treatment plant and treating it there to get that credit? No. What about for our retention ponds? Do they get any kind of credit? I think that's all the questions I have for right now.
Anybody else?
But just one note on the mega industrial park, because I knew you asked about the wells out there. One thing I want to clear up and make perfectly clear to this council is that everyone has been well aware from the years that I have been in, and these guys have been in utilities, that there was issues out here about being able to supply the Castle Basketball. We've never said we couldn't do it. We've always said, you gotta give us the time and the money to do it. I have documents, memos, and everything going back to 2016, 2017. Every one of these guys put in what we can and can't do there. That we needed to run a new line, that we needed to, basically on the gas side, what we need to do to up the gas out here. This is nothing new. Our job is to give the information that's asked of us to our management. What that management does with it is not on us. I want to clear that up because for some reason, everybody's blaming me and my staff that this information is not getting to you all. This information has been out here for years.
That made me think of another question. So you're saying we could provide that raw water?
We have the capacity to pump 9 million gallons a day. So what hinders us is our permit that says we can only pump 4.1. They've known this since 2016. And it was talked about then about running a new line and finding ways to get the credits to be able to up our WUF or cup on the consumptive use. This has always been out there. The same thing with a sanitary sewer, the same thing with the gas line.
So if the county comes up with a cup, could we run it from our Price Creek facility?
All of our water is potable. You don't really want to hook.
No, we couldn't run, it would be their cup, not ours.
Yes.
It could not be run through our plant because it's under their name. Now, if I could just clarify something to you too, we could give them the water, but we'll end up getting fined by Swanee River Water Management District. Okay? Phase one of the mega industrial park, for this Bella project or whatever, we can meet that, but we'd be left with 191,000 gallons left in our cup. By the time it came to phase two, we would be in the hole for 58,000 gallons a day. That would entail looking at a $7,500 fine right off the bat, and $25 a day, that sounds correct. By the time you get to phase three, we would be so far over, we'd be 1.5 million over. You're looking at $15,000 fine and $25 a day, is that correct?
But that is if we supply
That's
potable water to them at the quantity they're requesting. If they have their own raw water pumps though, what we would be providing for them would go down substantially. So we're looking at what, about 650,000 gallons, I think, phase one.
Yeah,
And,
That's the numbers I just,
and we could, that number would drop off drastically once their raw water pumps came on.
And they agreed to return that water already.
Right.
That's my understanding.
My understanding is that raw water, they will take over that and we'll drop off. What do you think?
My concern is our permit's just not high enough for the growth we're gonna have to have.
Exactly.
So
And
it's untenable, so we have to have Swanee River Water Management on board. If they're not gonna be willing to play ball, we gotta go to the next step higher. Whoever's above them.
Edmond currently, to try to take it and have our water, assessment done, so we can move forward with that with Swanee River.
Of course, one thing about fines is they only get paid when they get paid. You can fine people millions of dollars, but, I mean, you lose grants, but,
I don't think we want to go down that road.
well, I'm not sure yet. It depends on what it's costing us in growth and development. I mean, I got a lot of kids that's gonna need jobs, so we need to develop some things now for them to have a place to work.
one thing else I'd like to make you aware of. The mega industrial park is basically the same basin as Northern Rifle. It's more of a confined area for an aquifer, okay? So any water they pull out is gonna be harder for me to up my permit. Because basically, you only have so much where you have to offset everything you pull out. So no
Yeah,
matter who
except-
pulls it, you gotta offset it, whether it's the county pulls it, whether we pull it, it's gotta be offset.
Cause that's gonna affect the MFL. I
Yes, the
mean,
mega industrial park is also in the flow of water that feeds my water plant. So when you have a business going out there and they start pulling water, you're gonna see a reduction in my wells. You're gonna see my drawdowns go down more. You're gonna see, and then God forbid if there's any spills or anything out there, you can see contamination coming straight to my wells. One thing I've said ever since I started is my license on the line out there. I'm the one that can go to jail if these citizens get sick. I'm the one that can be held accountable for it by the state. I look out for the citizens of Lake City, and I look out for the city of Lake City. And I've been straightforward with everybody, management, the county, and everything. With Mr. Dial, we don't always have the same outlook, but he gives me the respect to take in my opinion and look at it all, because what's first and foremost is the city of Lake City and the citizens, and making sure that they have clean water from now on out. So we have to protect our groundwater sources. We have to concede and make sure we have enough water usage for our citizens before we look to expand it out. And that's basically what we've been saying for the last few years, and being strenuous with it for the last few months. So.
And when Mike says our citizens, that's all of our ratepayers, because half of our citizens are in the county. But that's our responsibility, is to take care of the ratepayers that are on our system and protect them and make sure that they have safe, clean water to drink, the ones that they have natural gas. All of our utilities, that's what the ones that we have to look out first. We always look for expansion. Myself, I have 3 kids and 5 grandkids that are growing up in this community. I want them to be able to stay here. I want them to have good jobs. But at what point, or what do we sacrifice to be able to do that? Are we going to sacrifice the interior of the Lake City that already has bad infrastructure that needs to be fixed? Or we could take that money and put into that and fix the neighborhoods that already have lines that are crumbling, roads that are falling apart. I understand that, but we already got 4775. That should be a big emphasis, because we know what's coming there. We know there's going to be development there. We got a whole capacity for them. We already know we got stuff coming up north on Bell Street and up there. So those are the ones that we really need to watch out for and take care of, along with all of our citizens and the ones, our ratepayers on our system.
I think it's right, but we do have to have a dual focus. I mean, we got to focus on maintaining and fixing, and that's just ongoing. But at the same time, we got to be growth. I mean, we could be like Ocala. We might be right at the beginning where they were 30 years ago. So growth is what it is, but we don't want to be a place that has no tax base because there's no real jobs either. So.
Well, I did a interview with Mr. Tony Britt over there when I came into utilities. And the first thing I told Tony, you can pull that the old interview. Thing I told Tony, I would love to run water, sewer, and gas to every citizen in this county. All I need is the money to be able to do it. And that way we got the whole county covered for growth and everything.
Thank you.
All right. Our next presentation, utility master planning process, Jamie Bell, Jones Edmonds.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Can you hear me okay with the mask on?
Yes,
Excellent.
ma'am.
Well, that was a very informative presentation. I very much appreciate Mr. Sweat and all of your utility staff, because it was a great segue into my presentation on master planning. I'm Jamie Bell. I'm an engineer with Jones Edmonds and Associates. I also have with me tonight Peter Sims. He oversees our planning and modeling group as well. He's a senior engineer. And tonight I wanted to just kind of give you a general overview on master planning. What is it? Why do we do it? And how could it help the city of Lake City moving forward? Generally speaking, master planning is your business plan or your vision for your utility as a whole. It helps to guide your choices, and more importantly, it helps to document a lot of the institutional knowledge that Mr. Sweat was speaking to before it's lost. Master planning can mean many things to many different people, but I'm going to go over a few items that it could include, especially on projects that we've completed for other clients in the past. Master planning looks at population projections. How is your city expected to grow? Not just residential population growth, but also commercial and industrial growth. We look at generic growth trends, apply those to your specific circumstances, and determine how much flow is expected to, for example, come into your wastewater system. How much water demand, how much natural gas demand will there be through that growth potential? But we don't just look at generic growth trends. We also work with your staff to identify specific economic growth areas. Of course, in the city of Lake City, as we've already talked about tonight, there's the Bell Road corridor, the North Florida Mega Industrial Park, the State Road 47, I-75 corridor. Those are all hotbeds of commercial industrial development in the coming years. But you also have areas with known subdivisions coming into town, known hotels, and these are all specific circumstances that we would include in your master plan to make sure we can meet both your short-term and your long-term needs. Master planning looks at inventorying your existing system infrastructure. What pipes do you have where? How big are they? What is the condition of your infrastructure? Not only the current condition that it's in today, but also what is the realistic lifespan of that infrastructure? Some pipes can last as long as 50 years or more, but others, due to specific site circumstances, might last a lot less. And so we look at, not only what do you have now, but how long do you expect it to last you before we need to upgrade that. We look at asset management systems that you could utilize, as Mr. Sweat talked about, to help you with your ongoing maintenance programs. And how do you adjust pipe breaks? Do you have enough inventory in stock? How do you manage your chemicals for your wastewater and your water treatment facilities? We look at capital planning, and not only what projects do you need where, but how are we going to pay for them? We can help you with rate studies to identify, as Mr. Sweat was saying, should we have different rates both inside and outside of city limits? Should we have a tiered rate structure? Are there other opportunities to bring in more funding to your utility system? And last but not least, master planning can look at your operations. We can evaluate and make recommendations to how you operate your systems and whether that's the most efficient way to do so. Not just your plant operations, but is the routing of your flow throughout the city as optimal as possible? Here, for example, with St. Margaret's and Kicklighter wastewater plant, can we move flow from one to the other to help alleviate some of those capacity concerns? With your water system, do we have concerns with water age or needs for flushing because your pipes are not looped? These are just some examples of how we can look at making recommendations to tweak your operations to, again, save money and be more efficient in the long term. That's kind of the what of master planning and what it entails, but why do we do it? What do we get out of it? Well, master planning is an opportunity to comprehensively evaluate not just one pipe at a time as it breaks, but to evaluate your entire system, all of your assets, and look at them as a whole to figure out a prioritization of your needs. It allows for a planned approach, not just reactive, more of a proactive approach that can lead to cost savings and efficiencies over time. It, as I said, documents institutional knowledge. You have a lot of folks who, as Mr. Sweat was saying, their information's just in their head. It's one guy who's worked here for 40 years who knows exactly where every pipe is. What happens if he retires tomorrow and moves to Bermuda? You're gonna lose that knowledge. And so a master plan can get all of that sort of downloaded into one place to benefit future operators. It positions you to better handle that economic growth, and instead of this kind of hurry and catch up method that we've identified we've been doing a little bit over the past 5 to 10 years, we can instead proactively develop plans of where we anticipate growth and what upgrades we need to meet that growth before the businesses are knocking on our doors. There's also regulatory compliance concerns, another thing that was talked about in the previous presentation a little bit. By evaluating your system capacity and prioritizing when and if projects are needed, we can help to meet your compliance needs. For example, fire flow capacity in your water system has to have a minimum pressure to be able to function properly. Does your system meet those needs, and can we address those moving forward? Additionally, with your water use permit, we're approaching our permit allocation. What can we do to not only get more water on our permits, but effectively supply that water, again, without running into any compliance issues? Similarly, with your wastewater system, sewer overflows can lead to big fines. DEP is cracking down on that. Senate Bill 712 is really changing the game for how much they're going to levy those fines. And so we can proactively prevent those from happening instead of just addressing them quickly when they occur. And last but not least, master planning helps you with your capital project budgeting. Not only identifying, again, where the projects are and when we need them, but how do we pay for them? We can help you coordinate through your annual budgeting process to not just hit you with one massive project all of a sudden in year one, but instead level your budget over a few years, kind of split that over your fiscal cycles to make it more amenable to your taxpayers. We can also help you adjust your strategy if we know when these projects are going to fall, to help you perhaps adjust your millage rates accordingly, to align yourself for grant opportunities, or to look at other budget line item adjustments that can help meet those project needs. So that's the what, and that's the why. Most importantly is, how does this specifically benefit the city of Lake City? There are three primary areas that I think master planning could really benefit us today, specifically with your water, wastewater, and natural gas systems. By doing master planning, we're going to lay the foundation to quickly support economic development opportunities. We've been talking about that a lot tonight. Economic development is a really hot button issue in the city of Lake City and in your service area outside of city limits. By having the master planning in place, we will identify ahead of time where we expect that growth, what we need to do to address that growth, and how we're going to pay for it so that when the opportunities arise, we can pull that off the shelf and get running instead of having to wait and go through these stutter step planning processes as the opportunities come. Additionally, and I think most importantly, having a master plan now can position the city to be ready for competitive grant opportunities. I've worked for funding agencies, and a lot of them really would prefer to have your projects be listed in published plans. That could be your capital improvement plan or your comprehensive plan. It could be the regional basin management action plan or a strategic plan of a water management district. If we can identify and conceptualize projects ahead of time and get them in those plan documents, you are way more competitive for the grant funding opportunities, and the districts, DEP, all the other funding agencies, if they're aware of your projects ahead of time, they can work with your staff, again, proactively to help fund those moving into the future. And then last but not least, master planning saves you money. By pre-positioning these projects and conceptualizing and identifying the problems before, line breaks happen or before we run into issues, we can save money on those kind of complicated and expensive repairs. But by sizing and designing systems now for those future growth opportunities, we avoid having to upgrade or upsize systems later. And so by planning ahead, only digging once, we save ourselves from having to do another project in the same spot 15, 20 years from now. So overall, that's kind of the what, why, and the how does it benefit you of master planning. I, again, really appreciate Mr. Sweat, Mr. Dial's presentation leading up to this. It was a great segue, and I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all may have about this or about any other of the projects that we've talked about tonight that Jones Edmonds has worked on. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask some questions? Going back to the 47 project. Now, we got the start time of that and rough completion I didn't hear yet. So July 22 is when the grant's up, but when we'll start construction in July and it'll be completed?
Spring of 2022, I think, is a fair estimate. Pending the procurement process that we will help the city with, we hope to have construction beginning in June, ideally June, but it may be July, just depending on, we've talked a little bit about COVID delays and supply chain disruptions. And so we are kind of living day by day as far as that goes. But we absolutely want to be in construction this summer, and we would like to have substantial completion by the spring.
And as far as the overall plan, have you presented this to the Utilities Committee? Because by city ordinance, this has to be approved by the Utilities Committee before it even comes before the board.
No, sir, I have not presented.
Okay, I was just wondering, that's more on our, keep it up that on yours. Now, you mentioned that these kind of documents and master plans can help with the water use permitting.
Yes, master planning can help you pre-position for items such as your water use permit, where, like Mr. Osborne was saying, once you reach 80% of your permitted capacity, that's when you should be entering into discussions with the water management district and identifying what strategies you need to implement in order to increase your permanent allocation. The city of Lake City is in a challenging geographic location with regard to the minimum flow and level that's been set on the lower Santa Fe and Ichetucknee rivers. And so we will have to undertake significant water use offsets in order to increase the water use permit allocation. And so that's why we've actually, as they were saying, begun the alternative water supply feasibility analysis that's co-funded with the Water Management District. The goal of that is to do a comprehensive water budget of the city's existing water uses and water recharges, and then to identify potential offsets through 10 key categories, which include agricultural operations, people who are using potable water for irrigation, golf courses, opportunities for stormwater harvesting, aquifer recharge projects, things of that nature. And by doing so, we hope to identify enough offsets to allow the city to increase their permanent allocation beyond where it is now. And master planning can basically help to identify, when will our projected growth reach the point that we butt up against that ceiling, and what can we do proactively to find those offsets and address those needs before we're in crisis mode.
Too late.
I was gonna say we're not in crisis yet. We're at the time when we need to start planning.
Okay, you bet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I wanted to wait till we got through both presentations before I spoke, and just in case Ms. Bell had something a little bit different than what Mr. Sweat had briefed. At any rate, one of Mr. Sweat's slides was how do we get here? How do we get here? And he listed several things. You can't tell me that we got here because we have entry-level positions in utilities that are not filled. That's not how we got here. We got here, Mr. Mayor, by lack of leadership. Lack of leadership on this council. I've been on this council for 2 years. I haven't met yet as part of the utility committee. We haven't had a utility committee meeting. That is no fault of the employees of the city of Lake City. That's the fault of this council and our city manager. And so when you talk about we need a CMMF system, right? Well, I don't know where that discussion was when we had the budget, but that's when we should have been told that information when we had the budget. I don't know what projects get removed before we get to our budget discussions. So the fact that we're here right now in a crisis mode is unacceptable. There's planning in the normal course of your budget. And so anyway, I just want to mention that and say we have to do a better job on this council having the committees meet. And Mr. Helfenberger has to do a better job going forward. I know Mr. Sweat's not been here for a while or for a short period of time, but he has to do a better job of identifying our needs come budget time so that we're not having these types of briefings that we've had tonight from everyone who's presenting.
Good. What? Any better? All right. I'll save my comments till we get to the utility, to the committee appointment. At this we're at time of person wishing to address council, and I have Ms. Linda Andrews that wishes to address council. If everybody that speaks would give their name and address so we have it for the record.
Good evening. My name is Linda Andrews. I live at 366 Southwest St. John Street, right across the street here. I used to be the superintendent at this wastewater plant for 13 years. Back then, before we had the Kicklighter plant, my flow was 2.25 million. It's a 3 million gallon a day plant. The idea of Kicklighter was to take off some of the load off St. Margaret's so we could make improvements to it. That was what Dave Planton had in mind when he was still there. He's passed away now. It's working apparently because Kicklighter has taken the load off and we can make improvements to St. Margaret's. I don't know much about this mega park out there, but I know that putting a lot of money into a wastewater plant that there is no flow to put to is not a good idea. I don't know what the status is of the plant that used to be out there with Service Zone because that's been taken offline and it's gone to Kicklighter. All you need out there to start with is a holding tank. Take that tank that are out there by Service Zone, put them out there at the mega plant, aerate them if you want to, get the collection system to calculate how long it takes to get flow from that place out there to St. Margaret's. start pumping that tank down every day, and start maybe say 11 o'clock at night. It takes 3 hours to get there. It would be there at 2 in the morning, takes 3 hours to go through the plant. That's great. A plant that has a straight, a level flow, not this up and down like just the city, you know, when people are asleep and they're not flushing their toilets, they're not taking showers. Take the flow from the mega plant and put it out there on St. Margaret's. It can handle it. I handled it at 2.25 million. We never had any problems as far as going out of compliance. So there's other options than building a great big plant out there and not having any flow to go to it. And some other things that I've noticed around town. They didn't do a very good job of finishing up the roads when they surfaced 90. If you came in off from 90 into this area, you went across a clunk right there between N and W and this building. They need to finish the roads. I don't know who the contractor was, but over by my church over there at First Christian, there's another gully where bump. So they need to come and look at the roads that connect to 90 and finish them. They aren't finished, whoever did that job, and I don't know whether it's DOT or just who it is, but that's something I'd like to see, rather than the city have to pay for finishing a project that was not theirs to start with. And then, I'm a tennis player, and I don't see the tennis courts being finished down at Jones Park. What is going on? I've talked with Chris about this before, and one of them is finished and the other one isn't. Are they available to the public? What's going on with recreation?
Ma'am, I think Mr. Sweat's behind you, wants to speak to that.
The other court will be done by this Friday.
All right.
Yes, ma'am, it will be done. Weather has kind of put us off. In fact, they had hoped to have it done by tomorrow. But due to the temperature and because of the rain we currently have, it's probably going to push it off, but they have guaranteed me this morning it will be done by Friday. And there is a grand opening on Monday, yes ma'am, at 5:15, the 14th, for the tennis court.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Okay, I do not have anybody else signed up that's present. Anybody else wish to speak that's in the audience? Okay, do we have anybody online? If somebody is watching virtually, if they will raise their hand so that Mandy can tell whether they want to speak. Okay, if not, then we'll move along. The next item is approval, well, it's a consent agenda, don't have that. Okay, we're to open a public hearing on City Council Ordinance 2020-2165. Mr. Coberline, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City of Lake City, Florida, pursuant to petition number ANX 20-01 relating to voluntary annexation, making findings, annexing certain real property located in Columbia County, Florida, which is reasonably compact and contiguous to the boundaries of the City of Lake City, Florida, into the boundaries of the City of Lake City, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date, period.
Okay, is there anybody wish to speak for or against ordinance number 2020-2165? Yes. And give your name for the record.
Scott Stewart, and I'm the developer, in reference to annexation. I hope this is a good time to say this. I'm the developer out at the preserve at Laurel Lakes. And that was permitted about 12 years ago, and we have water and sewer out there. And I think back at that time, there was an agreement put into place that at some point in time that would be annexed into the city. I believe we're close to that. I think it's contiguous across the street. So just to let you know if that's still needed or wanted, I'm the developer and we would finish the obligation. I believe that was part of the agreement back then, years ago, to annex into the city. And I know it has to be contiguous. I think it's close to that. So just to let you know, if you need that being done, we're willing to finish that part of the deal.
So just give it to the city manager and let him know that maybe y'all can get that. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else online? If not, then we'll close the public hearing, move into adoption of City Council Ordinance 2020-2165. Is there a motion as to that ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of City Council Ordinance 2020-2165.
Sorry.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Yes. Next, we'll move into new business, and the first one is City Council Ordinance 2020-2174. Mr. Devereux, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City of Lake City, Florida, amending Section 102-38 of the City Code to provide for the waiver of impact fees for the development and construction of affordable housing, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date, period.
Okay, is there a motion that the City Council read, City Council Ordinance number 2020-2174?
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of ordinance number 2020-2174.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I fully support this ordinance, but I've got a concern. A previous ordinance, and maybe the attorney can help me out, but ordinance 2011, it says for the utility committee under section D, it says that except as otherwise provided, the city council shall take no action with respect to making major improvements to existing utility systems, extending or providing new developments and subdivisions or utility services, or making any changes to the utility rates or charges without first receiving from the utility committee its recommendation relating to such changes. I think that this would fall under utility rate and charge. And so I think that we need to have a utility committee meeting with the utility committee recommending the change. I think that is what would be appropriate. And I think that's going to come up again in our discussions tonight. But I fully support what we're doing, but I think that we have to follow the ordinance that we passed 2011. And I'm concerned that we would not be doing that if we passed it tonight at the council meeting.
Okay, we already have a motion and a second. Is that a motion to table it?
I would make a motion to table it, yes. Unless the city attorney had a different take.
Mayor, there is a big difference between rates, charges, and fees, such as an impact fee, which is a one-time fee. A rate and a charge is generally variable. You do not see an impact fee again until there is a large usage or change in the existing development. And again, that again is a one-time fee. With that said, I'm not comfortable going forward without reading the ordinance that Councilmember Green cited to. The motion to table would be a motion to should be a motion to postpone. There's a significant difference in the fact that a postponement is to a future meeting. A table is to the, put it on the table for us to consider later on this evening. That the motion to postpone would need to be voted on. And then if it passes, or if it does not pass, then we would go back and consider the pending motions.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, having heard the attorney's explanation, then I would obviously make a motion to postpone, not to table, a motion to postpone this item.
To a specific date?
To the next city council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, we call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Yes. Okay, next we'll move into City Council Ordinance number 2020-2175. Everyone, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City of Lake City, Florida, to provide for the waiving and suspension of water and sewer impact fees for a period of 12 months as an inducement for economic development, requiring any applicant seeking to take advantage of the development incentive to apply for
and acquire a building permit and commence construction of the development prior to the expiration of the development period, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date period.
Is there a motion as to ordinance 2020-2175?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think there's not a motion because I think we find ourselves in the same predicament as the previous ordinance.
Was there a motion to postpone?
Make a motion to postpone?
I would second.
Okay, to the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay. Next, we'll move into resolutions, and the first one is a public hearing on City Council Resolution 2020-122. Mr. Carolina, would you read that by title?
A resolution of City Council of City of Lake City, Florida, adopting an inventory list identifying city property deemed appropriate for use as potential affordable housing, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing an effective date period.
Is there, well, anybody wish to speak to this, resolution 2020-122? Public hearing. Okay, if there's nobody wishing to speak, we'll close the, public hearing and, move into motions of 2020-122. You got a motion? If nobody make a motion, we'll pass it on. Next, the City Council Resolution 2020-135. Mr. Carolina, read that by title.
A resolution of City Council of City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of a construction and maintenance agreement with the State of Florida Department of Transportation for the state to replace, install, or construct various signage, pavement markings, and flashing signs within school zones located within the city limits, and providing an effective date period.
Is there a motion of the City Council Resolution 2020-135?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of resolution 2020-135.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2020-136. Mr. Carolina, read that by title.
A resolution of City Council of City of Lake City, Florida, approving an addendum to the agreement with Tyler Technologies Incorporated, formerly known as New World Systems Corporations, relating to electronic licenses and electronic permits at a cost not to exceed $17,012.00 for the first year of the added services, and thereafter at a cost not to exceed $3,762.00 per year. Period.
Is there a motion that City Council Resolution 2020-136?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of resolution number 2020-136.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution number 2020-137. Mr. Carolina, would you read that by title?
A resolution of City Council of City of Lake City, Florida, reappointing Vivian Doberly and Christopher Leidick to serve as members on the Planning and Zoning Board, the Board of Adjustments, and the Historical Board, period.
Is there a motion that City Council Resolution 2020-137?
I make a motion for City Council Resolution number 2020-137.
Second.
Been a motion and a second, any discussion? I appreciate the people that do serve on these boards and usually for no pay, and it's hard to get good qualified people, and, we're glad to have them. Ms. Sykes, you call the roll.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2020-138. Mr. Chairman, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing task assignment number 17 to the continuing contract with North Florida Professional Services Incorporated, a Florida corporation, for engineering services related to the redesigning of a drainage ditch near Northeast Jackson Avenue for a price not to exceed $8,100.00, period.
Is there a motion that City Council Resolution 2020-138?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of resolution 2020-138.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, you call the roll.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2020-139. Mr. Chairman, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, ratifying the mayor's extension of the state of emergency arising from the COVID-19 public health emergency, period.
Is there a motion that City Council Resolution number 2020-139?
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of resolution number 2020-139.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would just like to mention, I looked up the CDC numbers today for Columbia County, and according to the CDC, currently there's 4,941 confirmed cases of COVID in Columbia County as of today, and we've had 99 total deaths as a result of COVID-related deaths in Columbia County as of today, according to the CDC. So I appreciate you extending the resolution for the state of emergency. And I just wanted to get those numbers out to the public.
And I'll be glad when that we want to do these, but I noticed the same numbers you did, and it seemed like it was a week or so ago that it was at 80. Now it's at 99.
Yes, sir. And I think, vaccines are starting to come out. So hopefully we'll get them in our community soon.
Ms. Sykes, you call the roll, please.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Next, we have City Council Resolution 2020-140. Mr. Chairman, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the Institute for Justice Research and Development at Florida State University and Meridian Behavioral Health to research methods to reduce repeated interactions between law enforcement and individuals who have severe mental health and substance abuse disorders, and to identify ways to optimize the use of crisis stabilization units and post-discharge supports, period.
Is there a motion that City Council Resolution 2020-140?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of resolution 2020-140.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, you call the roll.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. We have City Council Resolution number 2020-141. Mr. Chairman, would you read that by title?
A resolution of City Council of City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of a mutual aid agreement with participating agencies and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to form a North Florida Child Abduction Response Team, period.
Is there a motion that City Council Resolution number 2020-141?
I make a motion on City Council Resolution number 2020-141.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, you call the roll, please.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2020-142. Mr. Chairman, would you read that by title?
A resolution of City Council of City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the conveyance of an easement to a portion of the sidewalk on Veterans Street to the John G. Kirkendall Living Trust, measuring approximately 48.75 square feet, period.
Is there a motion as to City Council Resolution 2020-142?
Motion for City Council Resolution number 2020-142.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
One clarification, was that 48.75 square feet? Because the resolution just says feet.
The resolution does say feet. I wanted to make sure that we understood that it wasn't 48.75 width or length. And so there was an omission of the square there. The survey is attached, I believe.
It says square
It
feet in
is.
there.
I'm sorry, the legal description.
Ms. Oxley, call the roll.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Webb?
Yes. Okay, next is other items, and, for this, for the year 2021, my recommendation for vice mayor is, Mr. Chris Green. I think at this time, that he'll do a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Now,
Thank you.
next is, committee appointments. And I made some quickly, didn't review the statute properly, and I redid that, and I passed out to council, I passed it out. And basically what my recommendation at this time is Airport J. Kill Chairman, Chris Green, Beautification, myself, and J. Kill. CRA is Eugene Jefferson as chairman, and by statute, I'm on that one. It's not authorized by our ordinance, which we need to review, but if we have a public safety, it'd be Todd Sampson with Eugene Jefferson. And our utility committee, I thought always had three, but apparently it was only two, so I'm gonna ask Chris Green to be the chairman and Todd Sampson to serve on that. But what I want to do, and that's why I wanted to, I think the most important committee we have right now is the utility committee, and I want to get it going. We recognize tonight the faults that we've not been as active as we should have. We need to run a lot of things through that committee before they come here. We need to do the planning that we talked about. I know that that's a biggie. And I know that what I want us to do is take the ordinance from our city attorney, make recommendations, but the utility, and I'm not totally bought into it and all, but I'm not totally opposed to all five of us sitting on that committee with Chris as the chairman, because that's where the big money is, that's where the future is, that's what we all need to be part of. Just like what we did tonight, we should have been doing that in a committee meeting. And so I want to get the utility committee going immediately, but I want us to all look at all the committees, see who we put on there as councilmen, but also we need to look at the other people that serve on these committees. They all have staff members, the CRA has a lot of our community people in it. Our utility, I want to make recommendations that we add the county representatives to that. So they're part of it because we're working well together. And I want them at those committees. I like to see all 10 of them pretty much at those committees, because that's what's driving the thing. So that's my recommendation on the committees right now.
Mr. Mayor, I agree. I think we cannot delay the utility committee. It's too important. So I do think that we need to move forward tonight with that. And yeah, and I would love to get a utility committee meeting scheduled very quickly. In the meantime, while we're doing that, I do know that we need to update our ordinance concerning the committees. Specifically, in my opinion, I think we need to bring public safety online as well. I know that there was some discussion about that in the packet, so I think that we need to bring that one up to speed. We talk about public safety, of course. You know, you're looking at a new fire station, you know, coming online here shortly, hopefully, and obviously with law enforcement is always a hot topic item for public safety. So it's important. So I agree with your sentiments.
You know, I want us to be very, I want us to do it right, but I want us to do it quickly. And I'm like you, I want, with these appointments, if they're approved by the council, then I'd like you to follow utility meeting fairly quickly.
Mayor,
Uh,
excuse me, Mayor, may I ask a question?
uh-huh.
So how are the members supposed to communicate their thoughts, and who are they communicating that to about the revisions to the ordinance?
Well, anybody got any recommendations?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I think I would make a recommendation that we have the Public Safety Advisory Committee be a standing committee.
But I mean, as far as us getting together, or getting the information of how many people we want on these committees and the, community involvement. Maybe we can go to the city manager and make recommendations to him and let him kind of get a list and see if he can kind of narrow down what we're doing and send it back to him.
Okay, there were a few notes on the information that I emailed out to you, so just you guys just make sure you read over that.
Right.
And make sure you look at those. Now, did we skip number 17 because you were wanting to talk about the Public Safety Committee?
I think we've kind of covered it. I guess when I went into it, we just went into all the
Okay.
I think since it's not by ordinance yet, we can't take any action, but, that'll be something that we work with all the.
Should we have a motion to authorize the attorney to prepare the ordinance? Is that what the discussion was?
Well, I guess we need to do something just to do these, appointments for right now, so Mr. Green can get active on the, utility. And then, we'll get with the attorney about, he can't draft the ordinance, I guess, till we get him some guidance on it.
We can do acceptance of the committee appointments for the advisory airport, advisory beautification, the advisory CRAC, and the utility advisory
Right.
as you presented.
And that way we can get the meeting scheduled.
That way you can get a meeting scheduled, and then
Is there a
the,
motion as to those?
I would make that motion.
yes.
I would second.
Okay, motion and second, any discussion? Real quick.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Stu Wilk, Columbia County Observer. I don't have a list of who these appointments are. They've changed. I don't, quite frankly, I'm sitting in the front row. I don't even understand what you said.
Okay, I've got a list for you.
Thank you.
And it's basically the same committee, just a couple of minor adjustments based on the statute. They're pretty much the
Yeah.
same chairman, same,
Yeah, thank you. This is not an inquisition. Based on the statute or based on the city ordinance?
right,
Based on the city ordinance, right?
Right.
But there's a problem. If you have all 5 members of the, of the city council on it, then you just might as well have city council meetings and discuss the stuff.
well.
And just if I could
think we need
finish.
to do it at a committee meeting
And-
rather
and-
than a month.
And
Only 2 right now.
But clearly, what you have to do, the ordinance that was never passed, I believe, I put in a public records request that there was a modification to the ordinance in 2008. I sent that to the city manager, which included the county, a couple of county commissioners and other people. I think you need to discuss this openly before you decide on what kind of ordinance you want and who's going to appoint the county commissioners. Whether it's going to be the county is going to recommend them, and that's the appointment that you have to accept, and what experts you want on the committee. Clearly, none of the city councilmen are experts, and none of the county commissioners are experts. They set policy and take care of the public's money. But there are experts that could be on this committee, whether it's Ms. Bell, the engineer, and as it was years ago, there were a lot of other experts on the committee. But without the experts where you folks can get some input, I don't know how you can make an intelligent decision. So I think, I'm just asking if you guys to consider this, that you maybe need to give this a little time to percolate. So at least you can get a committee now and not be in crisis mode anymore, and get a committee that can give you folks some cogent, intelligent, well thought out decisions. Thank you. This is not it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Ordinance 2011 provides for who's going to be on the utility committee and and the other committees, and that ordinance is, intact. Obviously, we would want to make sure that the other members identified on those committees, are, still willing to serve since they've been dormant for some time. But, the ordinance is already in place that identifies
At
who
least get
serves.
it going and then, Ms. Sykes, you call the roll, please.
Mayor, before I call the roll, may I just verify the committee members as you presented them? So
Hold
for
on a second.
Airport Advisory, okay, I have that. Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
and Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, next is, discussion and possible action structure for the airport committee, Mr. Luster.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. Tonight's your lucky night. Once again, you're going to get some information on airport master plan or master plans. What I'd like to do first, though, is say that it's been brought to city manager's attention that the airport did not follow the correct procedures when we comprised a tactical advisory committee to update the airport master plan and the new airport business plan. It's my understanding now that the committee needs to be approved by the city council prior to starting. And the issue is, which committee do we want to go with, the airport advisory committee or the tactical advisory committee that was drafted up by the airport and the city manager? Before we get into that, though, I'd like to take a quick moment and go into exactly what an airport master plan is. This is probably the most important document that the airport has. It shows what is going to happen to the airport for the next 20 to 25 years, the future that the airport's going to go. It's very important because it shows the funding, what projects are going to be accomplished. And the master plan is actually broken into two parts. You have the technical report, which is the written document that justifies the direction that the airport's going. It shows all the projects and it justifies the projects. And then the projects are shown on the airport layout plan, which is an overlay of the map that shows the existing facilities and all the future growth. And this is very critical because this master plan is approved first by the city council, then also it's approved by the FAA as well as FDOT. Once all these agencies approve it, it is sent over to the county to become part of their comp plan. Once it becomes part of the comp plan, then all of the items that are listed in the master plan are protected for future developers. And this is very important. Lastly, on the last item that's actually in the airport master plan is a list of all, like I said, it's a list of all the projects, and these projects have to be feasible. You have to have a feasibility and analysis of these projects to make sure that they are feasible, and it also shows where the dollars are coming from, who is going to be contributing, the FA, FDOT, and the city's participation in it. It's very critical because that feasibility study has to be, like I said, it has to be feasible. It's not, both the FA and FDOT will not approve the master plan. Now, what I'd like to do, I've handed down a handout to you, and basically I'd like to start and just sort of go over this handout to show you what we're doing and what it actually entails. As you can see, what I've handed down is the first page is the guidebook for the airport master plan for 2020, 2021. Basically, this tells us how to go about developing a master plan. And this is by Florida Statute 332 and Florida Administrative Code 1460, as well as the FA Advisory Circular 150-5070-6B, which dictates the airport master plan. Real fast, I'm not going to try to spend too much time on it because we've already had a pretty in-depth talk on master plans. But like I said, if you go to the next page, you will notice this is sort of the
Mr. Mayor, is
master
this on the
plan.
agenda?
Yeah.
Because I don't have this on my agenda, so I didn't know anything about this in advance.
No,
This is number 19.
No.
Number 19.
Yeah,
Well, it's not in the package though.
no, it wasn't in package because I thought it would be better. It was a last minute item that was added. And I thought by handing an actual handout, you could follow and see precisely what
I
I'm
mean, I
talking
think
about.
this may be good stuff, but we already have an ordinance that covers this master plan in the airport committee. So I didn't know.
Well, the question here, the reason why this was brought up for discussion tonight. No problem. The reason we brought this up tonight was there's a couple of different ways we can approach this as far as the master planning. We can continue with the Airport Advisory Committee as it is now, and invite some of the technical experts, people like that, people that are on this technical committee, to come there as non-voting members and just advise the advisory committee. Or we can actually continue with this as a tactical advisory committee that would report its findings to the Airport Advisory Committee. And then, of course, they would, the advisory committee would bring this to city council.
So a committee of the committee.
If you
Committee of the committee, right?
I think master planning is clearly under the airport advisory committee.
If you,
Now,
if you look at the third sheet, you'll see the current makeup of the Airport Advisory Committee.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I agree with what Mr. Sampson is saying. We have an ordinance that tells us it's not optional. There's an ordinance to follow that provides for an airport advisory committee. So it's not optional which committee we go with. We're complying with our own ordinance. So I think that we need to do that. Mr. I don't want to.
no, that's exactly right. And what we could do, I mean, if we want to add more people to the committee, that could be done through
Given the names
recommendation, or
to
you
the
could have
mayor.
non-voting members or.
100%. I think the mayor would appoint, we would, give our advice and consent for those members. I think the way to move forward is for the members who are not on the airport advisory committee that Mr. Lester would like on the committee, give those names to the mayor, he can appoint them and we can approve them at the next city council meeting.
Exactly,
That makes more sense.
exactly. Because master plan, this all falls under that committee.
And that's all we were after, is some direction.
Okay.
Let us know how you want to proceed. That's what
Yeah, in the future, if there's supporting docs though, and it's coming in that agenda, I want the supporting docs with the agenda. I'm just a little bit of a slow learner and I gotta read through it 10 or 12 times to understand it. I'll take this and read it, so by the next meeting, I'll know what we're doing.
If you look at the fourth page, that is the current committee, and that's the ones that are on that I would suggest be added to the committee.
and in line with what we were talking about a little while ago about redoing all the committees, this is a good one. And I'd like your input for that and see how we can do it to comply with what we need to do. But we do need to get master plans in these areas. And y'all have done a good job out there with everybody, but we do need the players involved in it because there is a lot of things going on out there.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Department of Administration, continuation of meetings at the Columbia County School Board Administration Building, Mr. Heffelberger.
Yes, I passed out the first quarter of next year for when we would normally schedule the regular city council meetings. The school has said those dates are available to meet here, and I would just like to know if you'd like to just continue doing that, where you have the ability to have, currently with the separation for COVID, we can accommodate maybe 13, 14 people at City Hall. Here you can accommodate over 80 people. So my recommendation would be to continue the meetings here for the time being until this COVID is behind us.
And I know you gave out this with the possible dates, and you got Monday the 4th, and then Tuesday the 19th because of Martin Luther King Day, and then February, I think Monday's a holiday, so we'll be meeting on Tuesday, and I think you said there's a lot of business that we need to take care of, so that, I'd like to adopt this schedule, if it's okay with everybody. No. Not that I know of.
I think.
It is on the agenda. It's not, item number 20.
Mr. Mayor, I think these are the regular scheduled dates, how they would fall correctly.
I think
We've not
that's
done
right.
anything different in these days.
That's right.
Yeah, I think these,
It's the
Or
location.
Whatever says if the holidays on Monday, we meet on Tuesday, so you're in line with it anyway.
Yes, sir.
Just where we be.
That's my understanding as well. So I think the dates are the normal dates that we would.
So is there a motion just to continue to be here through?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Ms. Sykes, we call the roll. This is as to us continuing to meet here, I guess, through March.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Witt?
Yes. Okay, item 2 is master plan overview. Item 21.
We've pretty much covered a lot of that. I don't want to repeat what we've already covered, but there is one item that I think under this discussion, I'd skip over 21 and go to 22. Discussion and possible action on the Lake City utilities for the North Florida Mega Park. The one area that I think we need to consider is the water main routing study. And I've passed out a copy that has a draft word removed, but every word is identical to what's in the packet. We're looking at a study that would cost $38,900. That would take about 90 days to do, but would figure out options for routes and in the size diameter of pipe so that we right size this. As it was mentioned earlier, that's critical in a lot of our planning, but I would like to have this, if it would go ahead, referred, if you could approve the proposal, and then any updates, everything would go right to the utility committee.
Mr. Mayor, if I understand the city manager, according to our ordinance, we have to go through the utility committee. It's not an optional thing to do. So I can, I'll schedule a meeting as soon as possible, but I think we have to go through the utility committee according to our own ordinance 2011.
Okay, so we'll bring this to the committee and go from there.
I guess, I think this utility meeting will be pretty well attended. I guess we may need to discuss where we would even have it or whether we do it virtual. I don't know if we could do it virtually.
Well, I'm fine to do it virtually. I would like to give the city staff enough time to prepare what they need to prepare. And then the clerk enough time to make sure that we make the proper notifications. I could do it Monday. I know we don't have a city council meeting scheduled for Monday, so if we could do the utility committee meeting Monday, and we could have everything hopefully ready to go for the next city council meeting. To me, that would be, as long as we had enough time for the staff and enough time to advertise the meeting. If that's not acceptable, then, whatever time the staff could get together or the clerk. But I could, for me personally, I could do it Monday. I could do it sooner if we needed to.
Monday, I'm like you, it's the regular Monday night, everybody's usually available.
Yes.
The week out, if you get with staff and figure out what's the best way to put it, I'm good where you all decide that.
Yes, sir. And, we could do it in person. We could do it, again, I would have to see. Yeah, Monday would be perfect.
Okay. All right, Ms. Shuffler.
That sounds good. Now we'll get together with Councilmember Green to coordinate all that. I got a couple of just brief announcements too. The holiday market will be Saturday, December 12th in Lusty Park. We've had, we'll have 50 vendors there. There will be social distancing. Also, on the 12th and 19th, there'll be caroling in Lusty Park from 6 to 8 p.m. The high school drama class will be there this Saturday, followed by the Pine Grove Baptist Church. And then the following week, on December 19th, will be the Gateway Ministerial Alliance. We also have a lighting ceremony for the Sally A. Jerry Park, Memorial Park. That will be Thursday, December 10th at 5:15 p.m. And finally, as it was mentioned earlier, we have a tennis court grand opening Monday, December 14th at 5:15 p.m. at Young's Park.
Is there, oh yeah, because of the meeting. Do we have, Mr. Helfer, do we have a projected time? I could meet before or after. I'll work it out with Mr. Helfer and we'll advertise it appropriately.
A question on that, Mayor. Now, the current members of that advisory committee, I know that the mayor can appoint and then the board approves members. Were there additional members that needed to be appointed before this meeting?
I think we go with what we got, by ordinance, the ones that were approved tonight, have staff there and council, the other council members.
Mr. Mayor, I do believe the ordinance does apply job title, not name, so I think we're okay because of the position title.
If there is anybody listening. Okay, anything else from Jeff first?
No.
Anything in council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
One thing I want to make sure that we get out to the public tonight, because there's a lot of talk about utilities, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands that your drinking water for the city of Lake City is safe and reliable and dependable. So I want to make sure of that. I want to make sure that the citizens of Lake City also understand that their septic system or sewer system is also safe and reliable. And if you have issues, we have city crews who respond every day and fix those issues. Your natural gas is safe and reliable and available to you. So don't let the discussions that we're having tonight make you think that something is unsafe. Our utility department is doing a great job, and I just want to get that message out to our citizens.
Thank you. All right.
I have something to say.
Sure.
I have a couple of things. First of all, about 2 years ago, in a council meeting, I spoke in the council meeting about diversity in the city. And here it is 2 years later, there's no diversity in City Hall. There's only 2 people that work in City Hall that look like me. They're not in the public eye. I went in there the other day to pay my utility bill. They've hired another, hired another young man. Didn't look like me. And I got a problem with that. Now, I'm glad the utility is here. Would y'all guys please stand up in the utility? I mean, if you don't have to if you don't want to. But again, there's nobody in that group right there is in a supervisor position. Now, the young man, Mr. Dumas, he was in customer service. From my understanding, he got in a little trouble, and they created that position for him. Now, again, I want everybody in this building, this room tonight, to see that there's nobody over there in a supervisor position. Young man, you can't stand up? Oh, could you stand back up? Thank you. My point exactly. That group there, he might be saying that that's the best group in the state of Florida and Columbia County. It's the best for him. But I think that some of the reason why the utility and the water is the way it is now, the city had hired an engineer from Suwannee County, River Water Management. When the supervisor, that Paul Dow guy, when he was hired, he got rid of the guy, and the guy went back to Suwannee River Water Management and he got his job back. So that's some of the problem why we're having issues with permits from Suwannee River Water Management. Now, I've got that there clear. Now, I want to talk about our city attorney. For the past few months, I've been dissatisfied with Mr. Coberline, with his performance for the city. And with that being said, I don't want to call out any issues that I've had with him, but I've had some issues with him. So with that being said, I want to make the motion that the city terminate his contract. And that's all I have, Mayor.
I'd like to second that motion. Call the question.
Well, there's motion there, discussion is, I think it's kind of premature at the end of the meeting, not put on the agenda or to have any basis. So I just think it's premature to do it. I mean, I'll call for the vote, but I think it's. Ms. Osh, you call the roll?
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
No.
Mr. Green?
No.
Mayor Witt?
No. All right, anything else?
Well, before we leave that point, Mayor, I would like to, speak person for myself. I'm in a position where if you're asking me to terminate somebody, I need some substance, to base that upon, to terminate somebody, which I don't have. So I think it would be an injustice for me to go to terminating without having some substance to support that. If that is given to me and evaluated, and then I can base an informed decision based upon that. But at this point, I don't have that at a given point.
Okay.
And that is the basis for my vote.
Okay, anything else?
Mayor,
Yeah.
I too don't have any substance, having discussed any complaints or issues with the council members. I haven't texted with Mr. Hill since August 8th. but I don't have any communications or correspondence or any personal in-person discussions. And so I will address each of the gentlemen individually and ask them for their feedback. Hopefully, we can have a constructive conversation and do what's in the best interest of the citizens and have another discussion.
I appreciate that. Anything else?
But back to the city manager, I would like to see some diversity in city hall and utilities.
Okay.
We adjourn.